Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is Totu Bravo. Today's video we're going to talk about bolts. What we use currently. Today we're going to talk about our bolts. And we're going to reference our notes here. What we're going to look at is the arrow bolt inspection process that we've currently put into place. This is something we haven't done in the past. In the past, we took everything for face value, that it was good to go, that the straightness was straight, that it would fly well. We would marry it up with our mechanicals, and we would shoot a couple of the bolts with the practice head that was provided. But we're doing things totally different. We've transitioned from a mechanical broadhead to a fixed broadhead. Mentioned that in the previous video. So we've started inspecting, or being a little more detailed, doing a little more of our due diligence in checking our bolts that we intend to practice with and hunt with. So this includes visual inspections, which is something we've always done. You know, we've always done a visual inspection of the bolt. But now we're going in and we're weighing each bolt as a naked OEM bolt as such, as you see here, and then weighing them with both of the broadheads that we intend on practicing with, and eventually choosing one of the two and hunting with that. Spine testing with the arrow checker here, or the bolt checker, and from there we will keep and get rid of arrows that don't pass the final test, which is spins true with the broadheads that we've chosen to practice with. That's our new practice for the remainder of this year and going forward. Just to let you know, we started this process out with 12 bolts, 2 of which we found right off the bat, just spinning the bolt itself, were not true. They had quite a bit of wobble in them. So we've already removed 2 bolts from the process. We have found some bolts that perform or are truer, spin truer, with the Magnus Black Hornet broadheads here, and than they do with the Magnus Stinger broadheads. So we've sorted those out also. So what we've come up with, like I said, we've weighed all of the bolts that have passed so far, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of those bolts have passed so far. One of them is an odd bolt. That is the CenterPoint CP400 Select right here that you see. The other bolts on the table that have passed, the remaining bolts, are all of the CenterPoint, it's backwards, CenterPoint CP400s, but these aren't the Select arrows. These are the arrows that are rated 20-inch and .003 as far as spine straightness. Funny thing is, the Select bolt, or something that they call Select, is also .033. But these bolts are actually lighter than the other CP400 bolts. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. So out of all the bolts that we have weighed, we have a weight variance that goes from 397.5 grains and goes all the way up to 399.2 grains, and those are the bolts, and those encompass all of these bolts here, the CP400 bolts. That's the weight variance for those, I believe, 10 bolts. And then we have this CP400 Select bolt, and that was actually the lightest bolt out of the bunch with the 2 broadheads. Those came in at, this is bolt number 12, 394.2 with the Black Hornet and 395.1 with the Stinger broadhead. So this was the lightest bolt in the bunch here. So another thing that we're looking at doing, being that all of our bolts are sub 400 grain. So you may ask me why I've gone with the target range of a 400 grain bolt, give or take. That was kind of dictated by the scope that we put on the crossbow. We put on the Killer Instinct scope. That scope is manufactured and set up for 400 grain bolts. So all those increments in there, once you work out the speed of your bow with the speed ring and find the sweet spot with that, all of those additional hash marks or aiming points in the scope are zeroed or set up for 400 grain arrows. In the beginning, if you watch our first video, we were shooting 425 grain arrows because that was the direction we wanted to take with fixed broadheads. And what I found through the zero process, or what I found through the process of zeroing the scope, is that the aiming points weren't true to the dots or the hash marks within the scope. I was having to shoot the lower 1/3 or the upper 1/3 of an aiming point, or skipping an entire aiming point and aiming at the lower bottom edge of the triangle. It just became very complicated in trying to zero that bow. And in the field, I've got a buck out there. It's at 40 yards or 45 yards. I really don't want to be distracted in trying to figure out where my point of aim is on that scope, because I chose to go with a weighted of arrow that is not prescribed for that scope. I know that it can zero and it can shoot other weighted arrows. I'm not saying it doesn't. It's not what I'm saying. For me personally, as a hunter, I prefer to have it as simple as possible, and that makes it less likely that I make a mistake and injure a deer. So with 400 grain arrows in that scope, the triangle, the very tip of the triangle is 20 yards. The triangle itself is 30 yards, and then each additional aiming point or hash mark there down, each additional hash mark going down in order is 50, 60, 70, 80, and then so on, as far as representative of those yards. So that's the direction that I chose to go, is to keep it simple. So I'm shooting essentially 400 grain arrows, and the reason why I have a nock sitting out here is these nocks, these are the OEM nocks, and they weigh, I didn't write it down, but they weigh 9.4 grains. Now I've ordered some lighted nocks, 3 lighted nocks, that I want to use for my hunting arrows and my practice arrows, and I think they weigh 13 grains. So that's going to put me in the ballpark of 408 to maybe 412 grains per bolt. I'm hoping and I think that the scope will still be true at that weight. I could be wrong, and that's why we're going to go out and we'll do a video on it, testing it, once we get the lighted nocks. In the event that those lighted nocks don't work out, again, I'm going to go with accuracy and a more deadly fixed broadhead, less variables of failure with a fixed blade compared to a mechanical. So I want to go with the fixed blade. I want to go with accuracy, so I'm going to aim for that sweet spot right behind the shoulder, right in that thoracic cavity, taking out the middle to lower portion of the lungs, the heart, and all the other vascular goodies that are intertwined in that location there. That is my intent. And I think that this is my primary broadhead that I want to work well with this whole combination here, and that's the Magnus Black Hornet. This one has the bleeders and the serrated edges. This is a 100 grain broadhead. This is what I want to work, and so far it's done very well. And this is my backup broadhead. This is the Magnus Stinger broadhead. Not the preferred one, but I'll certainly take it if it performs the best. But so far, this one here has performed the best for me. So in the event that the lighted nock doesn't work for me, that's fine. I can accept that. We'll go back to the OEM nocks. I'm more likely, in my opinion, in all the research I've done, to get a pass-through and to be able to go through bone with a good fixed broadhead, blow out both sides of that cavity, entry and exit hole, get all those vascular goodies. That deer is going to go down. Lower end of the lungs, to the middle part of the lungs, I can accept all that. I think I can do that better with the fixed broadhead and a 400 grained arrow. I think will perform well. Like I mentioned earlier, we're spin testing these arrows naked like this. On the front end of that shaft there, you put a lighter color behind it, and you're looking for anything that's out of true there, any kind of wobble or anything of that nature. You don't see anything there. That looks pretty good. Let's move these broadheads out of the way. Move that out of the way. We're also taking the rear end. Redo our camera there. We're also focusing on the rear end of the arrow here. Right. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So we're also focusing on this end of the arrow and spinning that, looking for anything that is grossly out of alignment that could affect flight on our arrows there. And you can see that these arrows are not perfect. You can see it there in the spin, but it's not too bad. We'll take one of the regular CP400 arrows there. That looks pretty good. No big issues there. Come back out to the, we're on our camera, come back out to the front. Look at that brass insert. You can see a little out of true, but nothing horrible. Keep in mind these are .003 arrows. That one doesn't look too bad. Now what I was doing, and I'll share it with you guys, is I was taking each one of these arrows and then taking the broadhead of choice, putting it on the arrow, setting it on our checker here, putting a light background behind it. I markered in the tip of the arrow, or I'm sorry, I markered in the tip of the broadhead there, and you want to focus on the point of the broadhead, because from everything that I've read, that's going to be the easiest way to see if it's out of true. Horrible wobble out of that broadhead tip. And as you can see there, if you focus on that tip with that yellow background, you'll see that that holds pretty true. That looks really good. And then if we switch the other broadhead, if we take the other broadhead and switch to it, you can see that I've blackened the tip of that broadhead just to make it easier for you to focus on it. Again, we're looking at the tip of the broadhead to the light background there, that yellow background. You can actually move that dot a little closer. Focus on that dot and the broadhead point. And you can see that that's not too bad. In my opinion, so far, now these have been shot, but in my opinion, these Black Hornets, they spin really good. They spin true. Yep. I guess I need to move that out just a hair, but you can focus on that point. But you see where I'm going with that, and we'll switch this out with one of the other CP400 arrows. Moving in real close. But this is what we've been doing with our arrows, checking both the fletching side of the arrow and the front end with the broadhead. And we have also been moving this in and out in varied lengths just to see if the arrow's got any really bad spots in it. Again, focus on that tip up at the front. But these have all spun fairly well. Like I said, we did have two that we have removed from the bunch that really spun out of true. I mean, that were really crooked. So this is what we're doing with our arrows now, prepping for continued practice and usage with the CenterPoint Wrath 430. And, you know, we really are up in our game this year, in my opinion, for me, in getting prepared for this upcoming second archery season. Preparing for this upcoming season is what we're doing right now. We've upgraded our crossbow, we've upgraded our crossbow scope, and we're upgrading our broadheads, and we're upgrading in our inspection processes as far as inspecting our bolts and ensuring that we have the best bolts out of the bolts that we have available to us to practice with and shoot game. Be a little more responsible, in my opinion. So this is Toe 2 Bravo. I hope you enjoyed this video. Appreciate you watching. Until we're out at the range again, thank you.